The SNES Mini, released just a week ago, is the latest in a long line of emulation consoles stretching back many years, including popular systems such as the Atari Flashback series, Neo Geo X, and various other systems from companies such as AtGames.
These consoles appeal to both an older gamer audience looking to revel in the nostalgia of the retro era, to teenagers who want to look back at gaming's heritage and experience games that they were too young to play on their initial release. It's no wonder then that these consoles are successful, with the NES Mini selling 2.3 million units before being discontinued in the April of 2017.
With its popularity, however, we should look at whether these consoles are actually the best choice for playing classic games. After all, emulation software continues to be widely used by many despite the official offerings many companies develop. So, today on Games of Reference,
with help from me, Byron,
we shall be answering the question: should you buy an emulation console? Before we launch into this topic, a quick disclaimer: both me and Byron are taking sides for the sake of discussion, so neither of us have totally extreme views for or against emulation consoles.
As well as this, when we refer to emulation consoles, we are specifically talking about officially licensed consoles, as unlicensed emulation consoles like Famiclones and the Retron 5 are an entirely different discussion.
And with that out of the way, let us begin.
One of the main reasons to buy an emulation console is the sheer library you can access on these systems. From the 30 titles that the NES Mini offers, to the absurdly numerous 1000 games within the ZX Spectrum Vega, there is no doubt that these systems offer many hours of playtime. What makes this great though is the relatively low cost of these consoles. For example, the NES Mini only costs £49 or $60 on release. This is roughly the cost of a single brand new big budget game. Not all emulation consoles are this cheap though, such as the Neo Geo X, which cost £175 or $199. But this price is still cheap in comparison to buying the original hardware and cartridges, where the cost can reach hundreds, if not thousands of pounds for more obscure collections.
The price of emulation consoles can seem cheap, but there is an even cheaper alternative for anyone with access to a computer or smartphone: emulation software. For a small or non-existent fee, someone can download an emulator along with a few ROMs and start playing after fiddling with the files. Unlike emulation consoles where you can only play the games that come with the system or with add-on packs, emulators allow you to play any game which you can find the ROM for. This is valuable for playing hidden gems and lesser known titles which may otherwise be extremely expensive to buy, and missed by the big emulation consoles due to their obscurity. For this reason, emulators can be a powerful tool for looking back at interesting design concepts and the evolution of gaming, informing the general gaming audience while also providing insightful studies for game designers.
One thing that can't be overlooked when talking about emulation though is the legal grey area it exists in. The use of emulators in and of themselves isn't a crime, but downloading ROMs of games outside the public domain is almost certainly a breach of copyright, in the same way that pirating a movie from the 90s would be. The legality of emulators is further brought into question when you consider that many classic games are on sale through Google Play and the Nintendo eShop. Buying these games through these services puts money back into the industry and tells the companies that these classics are still popular, potentially meaning more classic style games will be made. Downloading the ROM prevents this from happening, which could damage the industry. And while many games aren't available to buy this way, like previously mentioned, they are still protected by copyright, and thus there is a chance that companies may re-release some classic games onto modern systems if the demand for them is high.
The legality of emulators is something that can't be avoided, though it is worth mentioning that there isn't a case of someone being taken to court for downloading ROMs of games. In most cases, the worst thing that happens is that a website hosting ROMs will be issued with a DMCA takedown notice, and then people will start using other websites for emulation. However, downloading ROMs of already owned physical copies of games is arguably more acceptable due to the interpretation and grey area of copyright laws. This practice is similar to burning a CD for personal use, which is legal in places such as Canada, Spain and the Netherlands, granted the original copy has been legally purchased prior. While the law may say otherwise in many places, why should the same not apply to games?
The legality behind emulating software could be debated for days on end, but there are other points to this discussion which must be addressed before we wrap up. Another advantage that emulation consoles have is the authenticity they provide. These consoles often try to ape the look of the consoles they're emulating, sometimes at a smaller size. This can look great as part of a collection of consoles and allows them to fit basically anywhere in the home. This point of authenticity is further reinforced by the controllers, which can look and feel pretty close to the original. Well, obviously they can't be exact, but veterans of the retro era will feel right at home playing on these systems, and newer players can get an idea of what playing these games would have been like back in the day.
But why not go one step further and play on the actual hardware itself? Many emulation tools exist, such as the EverDrive series of cartridges, which allows the user to put a collection of ROMs onto a microSD or other storage device, and then onto a specifically designed cartridge for a given system. This cartridge will work with original hardware with a bit of setup, giving you the most authentic emulation experience possible. Not only this, some emulation software allows you to make changes to your games. By messing around with the files on your computer and by downloading community patches, you can do anything from fix game-breaking glitches, add CD quality music to 16-bit games, and even play ROM hacks with brand new, fan-made levels. This allows you to experience the games you love in a whole new way.
However, as you have alluded to, Reese, emulation software requires a lot of fiddling with files and computer settings to function. As well as this, certain games can be very difficult to emulate, especially ones coming from systems with unusual or powerful hardware. This high barrier of entry can prevent many people from entering the emulation scene, and this is why emulation consoles are so valuable. They provide an easy, no-frills way to play classic games, and thus are a powerful asset for introducing new players to the retro gaming scene. The ease of access allows those less knowledgeable about retro gaming to discover what makes it so special and potentially become interested in pursuing the hobby further. This new influx of young, passionate gamers is what's needed to keep retro gaming alive.
While emulation can seem to have a high barrier of entry, there are some ways in which a person can ease the learning curve of entering the scene. A multitude of tutorials exist for this very reason, ranging from articles in various retro gaming sites to video walkthroughs on YouTube. People can also gain advice on what emulators to use, clearing up confusion about what emulator is best for what task. And, if all else fails, newcomers can ask the internet. With the emulation scene being large and very active, anyone can go seek out these communities and ask about the problems they are encountering. Such places include the various gaming subreddits on Reddit, and dedicated retro gaming forums, such as the Atari Age forums. In this sense, emulation is not as impenetrable as people think. After looking at these arguments, you can see why people use emulation software instead of emulation consoles. These provide the user with a larger variety of games to choose from, allowing players to dive headfirst into obscure titles emulation consoles may miss, while also allowing the use of original hardware. However, emulation exists in a legal grey area, with the practice potentially being a breach of copyright law, even more so if one can legally purchase a re-release of the game.
Emulation consoles, however, provide an easy and accessible way for people to play their favourite classics or introduce a whole new generation to the retro gaming scene. Their collections of games are still impressive and offer hours of play and lots of value for your money. And while the hardware can't quite match the originals, in a lot of cases the controllers are either of a high quality or are close enough to provide an authentic play experience.
So, in conclusion, we see no problem for people who choose to emulate. As we have established, there are a myriad of defensible reasons for why someone would want to do so.
But emulation consoles are equally valid for people looking for a quick, unambiguously legal way to play older games, and thus we believe they are inherently valuable to the retro gaming scene. If you want to buy yourself an emulation console because you've never played the games or your old collection was sold off long ago, go ahead and be transported back to the retro age. That is, if the scalpers haven't got there first.
Thanks for watching Games of Reference. What are your views on emulation consoles? Have you bought a SNES Mini? And if so, how are you finding it? Leave that and anything else in the comments below. I'd be curious to hear what you think.
And if you want to see more from me, check out my channel, Byron's Reviews, where I mainly review films, especially B-movies, but I also do occasionally look at retro video games. And you can click on the link on the right to be taken directly to one of my videos.
I also want to announce that Games of Reference is now on Twitter, so there'll be a link to that in the description below, so check it out for channel updates and other nerdy stuff. But until then, see you in the next video.